Thank you for joining us. You're listening to the Write Project podcast and radio program. This is a show about writing and modern Newfoundland author culture. This program is produced and recorded at CHMR FM 93.5 FM in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador, and is aired on other great stations in the province and elsewhere in the country. It can also be heard online at www.chmr.ca. I'm your host, Matthew LeDrew, author of the Coral Beach Case Files series and founder at Engine Book. Let's see what we have today. Okay, well, thank you for joining us for another very special episode of the Write Project podcast, airing in a special time slot today because we have the Women's Work Festival on the go right now from March 7th to 11th, a wonderful, wonderful event that highlights women filmmakers and playwrights and women who work in the industry, and it allows them to get their in-progress work in front of different people and workshop it, get in front of dramaturges, all of that wonderful, wonderful stuff. Brilliant idea, brilliant festival. Please tune in. I am on the line with Cassie Lukeman, the brilliant, brilliant writer who's bringing us Arrested Decay, which will be being read at 7 p.m. Wednesday, March 9th. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to us, Cassie.
Thank you for having me.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Cannot wait for this. Everything I've seen about your work has been just brilliant, kind of thing. Raves about it, people do, kind of thing.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. It's wonderful. I've heard about you a lot. I'm very excited to have you on. Tell me about this play, Arrested Decay.
Okay. Least favorite question, but the best way I can probably describe the play, and it's how I've been going with it so far, is it's a ghost story when you get right down to it. I could get more complicated in the answer, but actually we came up with a really nice description today during the workshop that I also enjoyed. One of the actors actually was asked to sum up the play in a sentence. And she said, a woman returns to a moment in her childhood that has set the trajectory for the rest of her life. And I love that. I think that actually really encapsulates the whole thing.
And I'm assuming that knowing those two things, it's a ghost story and a woman returns to a moment in her childhood that sets the trajectory of her life, that she's dead and returning to that moment in her childhood.
She's not dead, but, well, you'll just have to see and check in on Wednesday.
Oh, see, now you've blown my mind. Now I'm like, so, okay, what is it then? There's a wonderful, it reminds me of there, not to compare it to something else, but there's a wonderful Stephen King story where it's like his interpretation of hell, and it's just that hell is just your worst moment ever, like
replayed
going
over and over again. Yep.
Yeah, and it's that, and so it's this woman in hell, and she's in a car ride with her husband, and they've just had an argument about how he cheated on her, and then he reaches over and kind of touches her leg in this like, hey, I still like you kind of way. And it just makes her skin crawl. So she's just reliving that moment for eternity, that 30-second loop. And I'm like,
yeah.
Yeah.
I love that actually, because Stephen King was one of the inspirations behind the writing of this play.
Interesting.
Yeah, we went through some inspirations and some of my sort of, I guess, my influences during the workshop, and Stephen King got brought up. The play is very inspired by short stories, and a lot of his own, as well as a couple other I'm a very big horror genre fan, so a couple other of those authors as well played a role in the writing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm also a huge lit horror fan. That's amazing. That's wonderful.
Oh, wicked.
Yep. No, that's my jam. Awesome. Okay, fun stuff. Okay, where did you? Okay, this is interesting. We're getting to know you. We're getting to know the play. I'm excited for this play. I'm gonna tune in.
Great.
Where are you from, Cassie Lukeman?
So I am from Corner Brook on the west coast of Newfoundland. born and bred.
Okay.
Are you are you familiar? Yes.
Very. Yes. Love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I'm going to ask you some questions that are kind of designed to get something out of the author, basically to form a weird little biography of you as a writer kind of thing.
Awesome. Yeah.
And I apologize for how silly they are, or weird or esoteric or whatever.
Yeah.
Cassie Lukeman, what's an early experience that you had, and you can define early however you want, but where you learned that language had power, that the written word or the written writings, that kind of thing can influence?
Okay. Oh God, that's hard.
You looked so prepared until the question came out,
Yes.
and then you were like, what?
Well, because my first like instinct was actually to talk about like this might be stupid, this might be weird, but my first instinct was talk about how I actually like learned to read fairly late.
Okay.
It took me a very long time. I don't have, as far as I'm aware, any sort of dyslexia or anything like that, but it took a very long time for me to pick up reading and learn to read. And it wasn't actually until I actually learned to spell. Like once I had the building blocks for words, then it became much easier. And I believe I was, I think, 7 or 8 before like it really 6, 7, something like that. It was quite late, like I said, but once it clicked.
That late. That just. But go ahead. Once it clicked.
I'm using the wrong, like, I'm probably remembering the wrong age. I remember I was in grade 2, and when it finally clicked, I read literally everything I could get my hands on, voraciously, and I jumped immediately into works that probably were a little too like intense for me, but again, like that's all I wanted to do. I just wanted to read, and I wanted to read as much as possible. And very quickly, once I got through like certain levels, just went up to the next thing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. And the reason I say that doesn't seem late, I don't know how old you are, and I'm not asking, but like I'm 37, and when I was growing up, like that was when they taught reading, and then slowly as the curriculum, like as it's expanded, they've like lowered the age that they try to get you to read, to the point where now they kind of expect it in kindergarten. So like, I don't know how much younger you are than me, so maybe it was like late for what they expected of you, but for me, I'm like, that's normal. Like, you know.
Yeah, I'm 29.
So yes. So yeah, big time.
Yeah, and I started actually in French immersion, which is, I believe, half the reason that wires got crossed and nothing was really taking. It wasn't actually until I left French immersion and switched to completely English that I picked it up. But yeah, definitely in like kindergarten and grade 1, like they did expect you to be reading or to be picking up reading at that point, and I just wasn't. Like, not in English, not in French, like something in my brain just like once we hit that roadblock was like, nope.
Then you got introduced to Stephen King, and you were like, okay.
Yeah. Well, first it was a bunch of like mystery writers. But still, you know.
Sometimes I wonder if that's it. I mean, not to get into like what we're not having this conversation, like, why do kids read or not read kind of thing. But sometimes I think it's just a matter of like finding what interests them. Like I know some young people in my life years ago that were having trouble, and they loved the new My Little Pony show. Friendship is Magic was big at the time.
Yeah.
And I was like, cool. And their mom was having trouble getting them to read. So I just went down to the local comic book store and got them every My Little Pony graphic novel, brought them in, and they were reading within a week because they were.
Yeah, no, I've seen that conversation come up too a lot, especially recently. And I'm happy to see it. The idea of introducing specifically comic books into school curriculums, especially for students who don't really particularly like the the books or the standard sort of novels that they tend to pull out every year for every semester.
Yeah.
And I also think it's probably, I really do think it's an issue with just not engaging kids on their level, like with their actual current realities. Like, I know when I was going through school, a lot of the books that we were reading, yeah, some of them were great and were very interesting and still topical, but a lot of them, you know, you very quickly came up against the argument of like, well, this doesn't relate to me, or I don't relate to it, or I don't find it in any way like speaks to my life or my time period right now.
Yeah.
And you can tell me all you want about why it's relevant, but you know, if a 14-year-old doesn't think it says anything about their life or what they're interested in, it's not really going to stick.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. You're 100% right. So what's a big life event that you feel influenced you when you're writing that happened after discovering language in grade 2?
I am actually probably going to be a bit of a brown noser and say getting into theater.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know why that's being a brown nose.
Well,
theater's awesome.
It is, yes. But like, well, that's why we're all here. We're all like, most of us are in theater. We're all playwrights. We're writing for things. We're actors. You know, we're already involved. But I came very late to theater, at least like in the town that I live in. Most of the people who went through it like or got involved very, very young. Like youth classes here start when you are very, very young. And a lot of the people that keep to it are from that like age. I was, I think, in middle school when I just on a whim decided to start taking youth classes here with TNL. And almost immediately, like, and I had no indication that it was going to be something that I was going to enjoy this much, but almost immediately I took to it, like really intensely. Yeah. And reading plays and going through plays and getting exposed to all those different things and seeing how they were written versus how, like, you know, prose, the regular sort of novels and short stories are written, and how it gets translated onto stage was really, yeah, it was very influential.
Okay, that makes sense. I like that. Yeah. I like the way the plays work too. The way that I spent a little bit of time in theater when I was young, and it's just not something I stayed with. But like, I love that visceral kind of reaction, that audience reaction to performing and stuff like that. Like, so much of being a novelist is finally finishing something and being like, hey, can't wait to find a reaction to this. 3 years later, you get your first review, and I'm like,
yeah,
I hate everything. Like,
well, first I got to find an agent, and then I got to get it to sell, and then
even if you go more and get it directly to market, like getting a human to read your book and then review it, like even just on Goodreads, even just a reader, not a
Amazon reviews,
anything. And so often I'm like, you could even just say you hated it. Like, I don't even want a good review. Like, I just
tell me something. Give me some sort of reaction to this.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I've been reading it.
I've been.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Pardon me this odd digression, and you'll get the hint that there are a lot of odd digressions as we go forward. But I have to ask about the Stephen King influence and discuss that a little bit, and what you like about him and what you don't, because specifically, I got early on in the lifespan of this podcast, this radio show, I got a lot of answers to a specific question that I'm going to ask later. That was Stephen King. Like, everyone seemed to answer to this question a Stephen King novel or Stephen King in general. And I was like, okay, cool. It happens so often that I made a spin-off question that was basically, what's your favorite and least favorite Stephen King novel? And because fate hates me, the second I did that, anytime I had someone on and I asked that question, they said, I've never actually read a Stephen King novel, or I've never read a Stephen King fiction novel. I've only ever read on writing. And I'm like, how are you 50 years old and never read a Stephen King novel, the most prolific, like widely read author on the you have to go out of your way to not pick one up. You know what I mean?
Yes, yeah.
But I've got you on the line now, and you've said Stephen King is an influence.
Can't get away. So
this is it. So it's like, bam, let's talk about Stephen King. What's your favorite, least favorite? What about him influences you? Everything.
Awesome. So I will immediately start by saying I'm mostly a Stephen King short story girl.
Wonderful.
Yeah, like the novels are, I'm going to say fine, and I know they're seminal. Like I understand, like they are very like ingrained in the culture, and that's great. But maybe it's because like they're so easy to learn through osmosis.
Yep.
I've never really felt particularly like moved, or I shouldn't say moved. That's not. I've never gotten to actually have like a very spontaneous, I guess is the right word, reaction to one of the novels. Whereas the short stories tend to be a lot more obscure sometimes.
Yep.
And there are a lot of them, and from so many, but from various different eras of his writing life as well. And I feel like every single collection has almost a different flavor, a different perspective to it because of that. I also do love that almost everyone includes a huge write-up in the beginning where he just talks about themes and writing and what have you. And I totally do also have on writing the half memoir, half this is how you write. I think it's really good.
It's brilliant.
It is, yeah. And it makes sense because he was an English professor. Like he taught writing. So of course it's going to be good. But the short stories, I really love because they're so varied.
And I love his thing that he does with the short stories, the Dollar Babies film thing. That's brilliant. Where any like film student can buy the rights to one of his short stories for $1 and make a film out of it. That's the Shawshank Redemption. The rights to it were bought for $1.
Yeah, like that's wild to me that can happen. But I appreciate it. Like I actually think it says something very great about him as a creative. My favorite one. Oh my God. Well, actually, my favorite one, or the one that's always sort of stuck in my brain, is probably the one that was like a really big influence on Arrested Decay, like this script.
Sure.
And it's not well known. Like it's not one of the big ones.
Okay.
I think a couple years ago, somebody made like a really small student film based off of it. But otherwise, it has, made no impression in pop culture whatsoever. It's called Nona. And it's in Skeleton Crew.
Oh, I've read that. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and King has said it's kind of his take on Poe. Like it was his attempt to write with Edgar Allan Poe style themes and ideas. And you can kind of see that like once you know what the influence was, especially that idea of like the sort of like the woman back from the dead, or like the malevolent woman who is not really just a woman or a human being, that always sort of stands for something else. Like and half the time it is like a dead lover, and the other half of the time it's like the main narrator's own sort of internal destructive tendencies.
Yep.
And that's essentially what it is, or what I think it is in Nona. Like the narration's all first person and it's totally unreliable narrator.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love unreliable narrators. I love
Yeah.
That's brilliant. Least favorite?
There's a couple that are just sort of like, they're early ones that I think are not necessarily like bad, but they show the little things that I feel like Stephen King is weird about or gets weird and hung up on about. Like at this point, I think like Stephen King's weird sexual stuff is its own meme. Like,
I've never heard it said like that before, but yes.
You know, like most of his stuff contains like little tiny little weird things that have to do with human sexuality. And sometimes that's fine because I think he's actually very good at writing about and understanding real human behavior. And I've heard him explain that that's why sex comes up so much, because it is such an integral part of human behavior. And when people are in dangerous or terrifying situations, they do get weird. But sometimes it's too weird. Like, sometimes it's a bit like, I don't think you needed to put that sex scene in there, Stephen, but you did. You found a way. There's I forgot the name of the short story, but it's the one where 4 kids go swimming at a lake. And when they climb onto like a raft in the middle of the lake, there's actually some sort of alien color changing blob in the water that slowly begins to pick them off one by one. And like midway through the book, there's only 2 of them left, one girl and one dude. And I believe like she starts getting hysterical. They have like a physical altercation that turns into him like having sex with her. And you're just sort of like, what is going on? Like, why is this happening right now? We skipped so many steps to get to this moment. I understand. And then 2 seconds later, she's dead.
Of course. Never forget the influence of cocaine on Mr. King.
That's like, a big one.
It is, especially the early stuff where it's like, oh, why did this happen? Well, let me explain.
I know. What is it? There's like 2 books he does not remember writing because he was either he doesn't remember Cujo, which he regrets because he likes it. He thinks Cujo is actually a really good book. But there's one other one that was also popular, and he has straight up said he hates it. He thinks it's a trash novel.
There's one that he actually had pulled, but I don't think it was due to drugs. It was one of the Bachman books, Rage.
Okay. No, that was because of the school shooter, right?
Yes.
I believe that was intentionally, like he took that off intentionally.
Oh, big time. Well, not only was the subject matter gross, but they kept finding it in the lockers of kids who did school shootings, and it's like, get this out of here.
At that point you start to feel really uncomfortable.
Like I believe his exact words where he called his publisher and said, get that trash novel off the shelf.
But it's hilarious sort of now though, because you find like eBay copies being sold for like thousands of dollars. Like it's so the ones that still exist are now being bought at like insane prices as people sell them off. It's weird. That's a weird thing that happens. That actually happens as someone who like deals with small press and stuff like that. A level of that happens automatically. Like if you self-published a book, like say right now, then you took it down, whatever copies are left in the system, Amazon will automatically jack the price up to like $900 on those few, just in case there's some fan out there that desperately wants it, and they'll keep it there forever. Because it doesn't matter to Amazon.
No, they're just like, all right, we got these 3 copies in the back of the warehouse, whatever, no big deal.
Let's see what we can make as much on them as we can.
If they never sell, whatevsies.
Jeff Bezos don't care.
Nope, he sure don't. He is a honey badger.
He's richer than God.
Sad but true. Okay, that's wonderful. I love talking about King and all his weirdness. He's so weird, man. Like he's so weird. He's especially he's so good about some stuff. I think my least favorite one is a modern one called Big Driver, which
Okay.
it's from a collection called Full Dark No Stars, which is a
Oh,
great collection.
yeah,
Yeah,
I got that one.
yeah. Big Driver is this one about it's about sexual assault kind of thing, and
Okay.
it's just very.
Is
I'm
it?
speaking in a term, but it's very like if you were a white man right from the 80s who was on cocaine who wrote this, it would be like, absolutely, this makes sense. And this is of the time. This is perfect. This is
Oh yeah.
what you're supposed to write about. But it wasn't 1983. It was
Right.
2003. And I'm like,
Yes. I don't know if that was the thing to do.
yeah, yeah.
Oh no, I will say that that collection actually does have another short story that I really enjoy. I think it's the one with
1922.
rats. Yes.
Yeah. They
Yeah,
made
yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
Netflix film out of that was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually really enjoyed that one. That was good.
Okay. Okay. All right. Wonderful. Well, this was a tangent, and that's absolutely fine. Tangents happen. Everyone out there that's a Stephen King fan, or a theater fan, or a fan of the written word, or has ever read, or has ever been spoken to in the English language, please check out Arrested Decay by Cassie Lukeman, 7 p.m. on March 9th, this coming Wednesday. And check out everything with the Women's Work Festival, please. If you were going to be stranded on a desert island for the rest of your life, what 3 books would you want with you?
A memoir by Carmen Maria Machado called In the Dream House. Chuck Palahniuk's novel Invisible Monsters. The Only Good Indians by
Stephen
Stephen
Graham.
Graham Jones. Yep.
Yep.
I just think
Stephen.
that novel is so good. I think it's worth a checking out. I will say I think I sort of enjoyed like the first 2 halves of the novel more so than the ending, but overall, like he's a fantastic writer. He's absolutely fantastic. Like I would read any of his stuff just for the writing alone. I think that would be really helpful for someone. Like if you're a writer who like sometimes gets writer's block or gets stuck or like, you know, you get really, really bogged down in how do I form this sentence? How do I put it together? He's really good for that. The idea itself, I love it. He's actually been doing genre writing forever, for a very long time. It's just this was the first novel that got, I'm going to say, like mainstream popularity. He has actually a huge amount of horror writing in his background.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I find this is gonna make me sound so old and ridiculously old, but I find I've gotten squeamish as I've gotten older, and I can see it in my writing. Like I'm a horror slash crime writer. Like I write in a lot of genres, but that's the one that you can really peg me down to, the one that I write most in. And time
Yes.
was, I was like, it's all just fiction. You know what I mean? Like
Yes. Yeah.
let's use this violence and gore and mayhem to explore the human condition. And it's supposed to gross you out if it's supposed to gross you out, and it's supposed to be
Yes.
artsy if it's artsy, and let's go.
Yeah.
And as I've gotten older, I noticed in my writing I do it a lot less, like the violence is off camera. And then the other, probably about a year ago now, my wife turned on this crime procedural historical show called The
Yep.
Alieness.
Oh yeah, I've
Um,
watched that.
yeah, and I couldn't. It made me so uncomfortable, and I was
Really?
never this way, but I just could something about the violence against these trans kids and whatever. But I literally, it's the only time I've had to turn something off because I was squeamish, and I'm like,
Interesting.
I've gotten old. I can't handle violence and gore anymore, and I'm a violence and gore writer. What am I doing with my life?
Wow. I think maybe because I'm a theater person, I'm a performance person, so I've always approached things from that kind of perspective. You know what I mean? Like I've had people ask me, like, I think, or say to me, you know, you seem like a sensitive person. How can you watch this slasher movie and people get gutted and this gore porn? And I'm
Yep,
like, well, because I look at it and I see special effects.
yep,
I look at that and I see how much work has to go into that and how impressive like the camera techniques and everything to make that believable. And so I see a shot, I see a production. I don't see, you know, intense gratuitous violence or anything like that.
Thank you for coming on the Right Project podcast, Cassie.
Thank you so much again for just asking me to do this. It was great.
Wonderful, wonderful, absolutely.